Morning, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. I want to discuss this morning in our series on this Gladiator build, the front and rear bumpers and the winch. We talked in the very first video in this series about upgrades we were going to make to this Gladiator for our off-road and camping build. A couple of those things were front and rear recovery points, steel bumpers, and a winch. So I've put rough country bumpers on the front and rear and a 12,000 pound rough country winch on this vehicle now. And we're going to talk a little bit today about preparing that winch for use, because when you buy it from the factory, you have it installed at a custom shop like I did, you can't be guaranteed that they have pre-tensioned or pre-stretched your winch rope, and that's very important. What happens when you spool this line onto your winch is it kind of looks like this on the winch, and if it's not pre-tensioned and you put that under load, what can happen is it can slip in between and cause friction in the wraps, which will then either flatten out or burn your line as it's coming off the winch, drastically reducing the tensile strength from its originality on that winch line. So you want to pre-tension that line. I'm going to show you how to do that today. We're going to talk about these two bumpers real quick. Let's get started, guys. Okay, we've got a rough country steel bumper on this thing with two recovery points on the front. The fair lead plate and our winch is here. We have a light bar on top, and we have two lights, one here and one here, all controlled from the inside of the vehicle. The winch is controlled by an external controller that we'll talk about in a few minutes. The important part of this discussion is two front recovery points and a winch. Now I've added a factor 55 closed link here for recovery. We'll talk about why I did that. It's a much safer option than just a normal dangling steel hook that comes on your winch when you buy it. Okay, the rear bumper on this is a rough country rear bumper with a step, two rear recovery points, and again, it's got LED lights in the rear that switch on from the inside of the vehicle. There's three pieces of equipment that we're going to use to pre-tension our rope. We're going to use a tree strap protector that goes around the tree to keep bark from being damaged on the tree and things like that when we're using it to pull against. We've got our hand control for our winch here. The last piece of gear that we're going to use is a soft shackle in lieu of a D-shackle or bow shackle. And we're going to use that with our flat link from Factor 55. And that's going to give us the best safety if something were to happen in a real scenario. It's not going to be that much stress on the line today, but getting used to using this equipment and testing this equipment and understanding how to utilize it is an important part of getting ready to go off-road as well. Step one, we're going to disengage the winch and we're going to pull some line out. Now we're going to take this D-link and we're going to walk toward a distant tree, and we're on a slight incline. Not too much of an incline, just a slight incline to use the weight of the Jeep to tension this rope. Now I need to come up here and keep an eye on things because I don't want to get to the point where I have less than about 6 wraps around that spool. So I'm going to come up here and pull some excess off till I get to that point, and then continue to walk toward the tree and make adjustments with my vehicle from there. Now you can see on this line, there is a wrapped material here toward the end of the spool where the last few wraps are, where it's pinned to the spool. You don't want to get past that. And this is about where you want to start. So we're going to stop right here, go to the other end, make our adjustments and connect to the tree and go from there. We wrap our tree protector around the tree and make sure that it's flat and there's no kinks in it. And then we drop our soft shackle through those two loops. Come up here, grab our flat link and drop it through there, and then connect it over the top. Just like that. Cinch everything up good. And we're pulling from the knot here to here. And now we've got the proper setup for what we want to do. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to throw this dampening blanket over the top of our line, about 1 or 2 meters down, just like this. Fold it over and lay it down. And what that does is, if for some reason this were to break, the metal object at the end is going to come flying the other direction toward the vehicle or toward you through the windshield. The only thing we have on the end of this line is that flat link. We don't have a bunch of pieces of metal connected. We have one piece of metal. By putting this dampening blanket on here, as soon as it comes flying back this way, it hangs up against this dampening blanket and it will drop it to the ground and will not let it continue to fly toward the vehicle. All right, so now that we have all those double checks in place, our safety's ready to go. We're ready to start putting this under tension and start spooling it up. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to switch this to engage the winch. We're going to start the vehicle, put it in neutral. Then we're going to connect our switch to our winch. Okay, again, our vehicle's in neutral and it's slightly downhill. It's not so much downhill that it wants to roll downhill away from me, but it's downhill enough to put tension on this spool as we're pulling line in. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to put on our gloves. If we have metal line that we're using here or metal cable, definitely want gloves. But even for Dyneema, I would use gloves. It's just a good safety precaution. Now I'm going to unplug on the side here and get my winch controller plugged in. Kind of get my cable up out of the way. Test things out. Okay, it's going in. So now what I'm going to do is just going to keep this under tension for a minute. The vehicle running is going to keep this winch from running my battery down. That's the purpose of having the vehicle running. And I'm just putting body tension on this until I get tight. Once the rope gets under tension, once I get this rope under tension, now I can kind of let off the tension, and now I'm just using this hand to guide. Because what I want to do is I want to spool this evenly across the spool, back and forth, as the vehicle comes forward. Once we get to about the last 30 feet from the tree, we can go ahead and hold that under hand tension, spool that up on there, and take the flat link up against, tighten it up, fold it over. We're good to go. And now this winch is ready to use the first time if we need to use it. So real quick at the end of this video, guys, a quick tip or trick, disclaimer, something I had to figure out from some research. First time I came out to tension this rope onto the spool, the auto park kept coming on and it was a total pain in my butt. So I had to get in the vehicle, wind the spool up while I was sitting in the vehicle, while it was in drive, and I had my foot on the brake a little bit, get out, redirect the spool, back again, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, 10, 15 times to get the job done. Then I went back up to the house and started doing some research, and people were telling me, oh, you've got to buy this $300 module to plug into your Jeep. You need to disconnect this sensor that's underneath the hood, yada, yada, yada. And I was about to pull my hair out because I really didn't want to disconnect anything. I didn't want to buy a module just to be able to wind the spool up on my winch to get my winch set up right. Long story short, I found a guy who had a video on a Dodge truck from 2018 that had the same issue, and all he did was plug the seatbelt in and leave it plugged in. He actually used a fake piece of seatbelt, like an additional seatbelt strap that you buy as an add-on, and plugged it into the seatbelt clip, and that took care of the problem. So all I did was plug my seatbelt in behind me. When I got out of the vehicle, it didn't engage the auto park. Go figure, something that simple would alleviate the problem, but it did, and that allowed me to go ahead and spool that as the vehicle was being pulled forward, because that auto park wasn't engaging and putting the vehicle in park every time it moved when I wasn't in it. So just a quick tip or trick, if you run into this problem, that's the way to circumvent that problem. But also remember that it circumvents that safety feature, and that is not necessarily a good thing when you need it. So I would only do that if you absolutely had to, like I did in this case. And if you had a way to pull something towards you, maybe a heavy weight, another vehicle, where your vehicle would stay stationary, you could wind that in, that would work just as well. But if you're alone, this was my solution. Appreciate your views, appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.